You know, I really don't want to be here tonight, but I'm here to tell you that there's something special about the North Carolina Open Meetings Law. It was passed for average people to read and understand, to give them a way to hold public officials accountable for open government. It guarantees their right to see and hear what their government is doing and to participate. Mayor Kinsey warned you that you were doing the exact opposite of that on the NFL stadium issue. She said you would be passing a, quote, done deal, her words, done deal, for a tax plan without meaningful public participation. She used the words done and deal 5 different times. We know that because we forced you to release the transcripts. Count them yourself, 5 times. Yet in your own official code of ethics, you pledged to obey the Open Meetings Law, to obey both the letter and spirit of the law. It's not my ethics code, it's your ethics code. Did you do that in the closed meetings to draw a plan to raise $144 million for the NFL stadium? You deliberated and voted in secret on a plan to raise the prepared food and beverage tax. That tax falls on anybody who eats so much as a cheese sandwich in a restaurant. You sent the plan to the General Assembly asking them to pass the authority for it. You and your staff lobbied for it. That's official action. The General Assembly rejected your plan and substituted a different one. But you proposed, deliberated, and voted for the tax plan behind closed doors, in the dark of night, away from public scrutiny, and without public participation. How can you even claim that that meets the letter and spirit of the law and of your ethics policy? The spirit of the Open Meetings Law is right there in its first sentence. Quote, "It is the public policy of North Carolina that the hearings, deliberations, and actions of these bodies be conducted openly." These bodies, of course, include city councils. Now, there is an exemption for, quote, "economic development incentives," or what the exemption also calls economic development expenditures. But a plan to raise taxes is not an incentive or an expenditure. It's on the whole other side of the ledger. It's a tax.
Thank you, Mr. Koza. Mr. Powers.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Council, and staff. According to Webster, ethics are determined by both moral judgment and conduct. Nothing could be more central to the public's confidence in our elected government than ethics. That's why the state of North Carolina requires this body to adopt an official code of ethics, and you have. Now, this essential document wasn't dictated by Raleigh or by any other person or group, but rather it was entirely crafted and certified by a vote of this body. The Charlotte City Council, not 40 years ago, not 10 years ago, but just 3 years ago in June of 2010. Now, I urge you to read it carefully because you are expected and obligated to adhere to its clear, concise directives. Why? Because when you read it, you'll find out that the stated underlying principle says, quote, "The mayor and city council members must be aware of their obligation to conform their behavior to standards of ethical conduct that warrant the trust of their constituents." Section 5 states, quote, "The mayor and council should conduct the affairs of the board in an open and public manner," end quote. They should remember when they meet that they are conducting the public's business. Quote, "In order to ensure strict compliance, your code of ethics, with the laws concerning openness, the mayor and council members should make clear that an environment of transparency and candor is to be maintained at all times in the governmental unit." Quote, they should take deliberate steps to make certain that any closed sessions held by the council are lawfully conducted and that such sessions do not stray from the purposes they are called. Section 1 states, this is important, the mayor and council members should be guided by the spirit as well as the letter of the law in whatever they do, end quote. Now, can anyone on that dais claim honestly and with a straight face that the spirit and letter of the North Carolina Open Meetings Law intended to allow secret deliberations and votes about raising taxes? Well, Madam Mayor and Council, that's exactly what you did. It was wrong. It was shameful. And as a result, you are now facing legal and ethical challenges and a crisis of public confidence. How can any one of you seriously propose that the city attorney pass judgment on these ethics violations charges when it was he who provided the green light for your actions to begin with? How can this council propose to now sit in self-judgment when only 2 of you were not participants in these clearly illegal and unethical closed-door meetings? I urge you in these remaining days of your term, please do the right thing and request an independent review by the district attorney's office or some other impartial entity. Your actions or inaction tonight on this crucial matter will determine whether or not you are serious about restoring the public trust, and I hope you are.
Thank you, Mr. Powers.
Thank you.
Mr. Coons?
I am hopeful that City Council will accept our request for your adhering to your own code of ethics. The City Attorney's seemingly careful choice of phrases and words in an open meetings law to skirt your code of ethics is not acceptable. Public sentiment is very strong across political, racial, and other lines that you are in willful, deliberate, and intentional violation of your code of ethics, and they don't like it. Just because a legal interpretation says it's okay to meet behind closed doors does not necessarily mean that you should. And if you are holding a closed session to avoid public oversight, as some evidence of such meetings clearly indicate, then you never should. That is what your code of ethics dictates. This whole thing is about public trust. And you guys either don't seem to get it or you just don't care. Your actions are clearly saying that you just don't care and that a code of ethics is not necessary. Fortunately, and on this point alone, voters have clearly made a primary race decision about the kind of leadership this city should have, and they rejected one mayoral attempt by one whose efforts clearly suggested that a code of ethics was not to be considered in keeping the public trust. Look among yourselves and decide who else shares that sentiment, because from what I have observed and many others have observed, none of you is willing to take the hard stand for openness in government as your own code of ethics demands. A simple vote that you just ain't enough, a simple vote that you do just ain't enough. You have to show us. And that ain't what you're showing us lately. And it shall be my passion to let voters know it, know what you have said in violation of your own code of ethics and openness in government. And God only knows how much or how many other times you may have done so by disregarding of your own code of ethics. We need people on this dais we can trust to be open and honest. And I don't see a single one of you at this point who fits that bill. None. Not one. If you disagree with this sentiment, then act accordingly. Or maybe we have the wrong crowd up there. I have tried not to get as passionate about this as I have, but there is nothing that has suggested that my passion is warranted than the arrogance that you all have demonstrated in this matter. Your own code of ethics, a violation, and basically thumbing your nose and thumbs at the public.
Thank you, Mr. Coons.